Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for Aloha, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ohana Packers Edition podcast. I am Iowa Joe, and Mike Kawano has dishonored us all by not being here, even though I have had this scheduled out for at least 2 weeks. He's at some birthday party, and I guess when you hit my age and that, you don't really care about birthdays anymore. So, you know, and I I don't use that as a valid excuse. So his pay will be docked at some point. However, I do have a good friend, a fellow Packers content creator, somebody who's been on the show multiple times as a replacement, Dan Kotnik. Dan, I don't even know what you're doing anymore. It seems like you keep changing all your content stuff day after day. Uh, you were formerly of Game on Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Is it Pack-a-day you're doing now?
Yep. Yeah. Been running the Monday edition of the Pack-a-day podcast with my good buddies Monty Moore and Camille Davis. That's been a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun this past season because it was the first time that I got to do a podcast where we were basically a post-game show every single week. Like every other podcast, like every other time I've done like a different day on the Pack-a-day or like did Lombardi's Bar or whatever it was, like it's in the middle of the week, so you're like 3-4 days separated from it. You're trying to figure out something else. Like this was a lot of fun to just like literally 2 hours after the game ends, get on, and when you're still like cheesed off about losing to Jared Goff again for the second time, like you can go on there and like emotions are still raw and have fun with it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know. That's been the nice thing about Mike and I's recording schedules. We do it like not long after the game. Even though the episode comes out on a Tuesday, we're recording the night after the game. So it's all fresh in your mind and your
Mhm.
emotions can fly because it's like, what the hell was that going out on the field? You know, what are we, some high school team in, the middle of nowhere and can't figure yeah. So instead of recording later on in the week where it's like, well, did that play actually happen or am I just misremembering something? And
Right. When you start looking at it with some kind of,
rationale.
impartiality, rationality, yeah. It's like, well, maybe it wasn't too bad. And it's like, no, like it was great that Carl Brooks blocked that field goal, but why are we getting that close to the Bears?
So, this week is our second week in our, annual draft run up. Last week it was Kawano and Mafi talking cornerbacks. This week we are talking the edge room. And this year talking edge room is even more different than I would even say last year, because last year we were in the mindset, okay, we still got a bunch of 3-4 type ends. Do we still move that way? Do we got this year we got a little bit better of idea of what we're doing because of the 4-3 and what they more need in that. So, we're gonna run this out like we do normally. We'll talk about the state of the room as is. We'll talk about maybe some possible free agents the Packers could conceivably sign, and then we'll go right into our draft stuff. So, and I know that's what everybody's mainly here for is the draft stuff. So, Dan, in your opinion, what is the state of the Packers edge room? And I won't hold it against you if you talk badly about my we'll call him my son since Westendorf likes to call Gary his son.
Yeah, see, that's the problem is we don't have an Ohio State rusher on the line. We've got an Iowa and a Michigan kid. We picked the wrong Big Ten. No, it's lackluster. Like that's I think a good word to describe it. Like I think especially considering we're talking about those two guys, Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness, were both top. I'm trying to remember when Gary was picked. They're at least top 20
They were
picks,
around the same pick, yeah.
right?
I
Like it,
think Gary was like 15 and
and
Lucas was
Lucas was
13, or it was like
something
flip
like,
flop.
yeah. So like top 20, top 15 pass rushers. They they need to be performing better. That Gary, a Pro Bowler this year, sure, but like with where they were drafted and the expectation that they come in with, they should be wrecking games. And I don't know if you can ever say they wrecked a game. Gary, you might be able to go back and find something, find it. I've never seen though Lucas Van Ness ruin a game for anybody.
And I completely get your feeling on it, but and this bit me in the butt just this week, but we won't get into that any further. Just to play devil's advocate here, you got to remember that Lucas was only in second year in, his second defensive scheme in 2 years. The big problem with Lucas going into a 4-3 defense, even though he played it in college, is Lucas played more of an interior lineman than he
Sure.
did the edge rush. So he's got all the tools to do everything. And there were moments where no, he didn't wreck a game, but you could see where, okay, that's the type of guy we need, because he was pushing his guy back or he was getting into the right spots. Just something happened here or something happened there. Rashawn, I have to say, is kind of in a similar boat. When he played the 4-3 in college, he was more of an interior guy. So, not to make any excuses for him, because yes, they really didn't perform as well as we had hoped. There are some things to look into. Next year, or this coming year, 2025, should be a better gauge on it. If we can pick up a couple of extra guys, maybe in free agency or in the draft, or both, that would help out a little bit. Maybe move those guys back into the interior some, and have a traditional type edge rusher. That might help. But it is what it is. But it's not just those two mainly.
No,
Yes,
yeah.
you had some flashes from Brenton Cox. Yes, you had some flashes from Inigbare. Yes, you had some flashes from Mosby, but there was no real consistency. That's the word I'm looking for. Consistency through all of it. But I also don't just blame the edges. I told Mike this several different times. It seemed like when the pass rush would do their job, the interior guys weren't doing theirs.
Yeah.
Or when the interior guys were doing their job, the pass rush wasn't doing theirs. And what I mean by that, and I know you understand what I'm kind of saying with it, but for those that might not understand what I'm saying, in an edge rusher, that's basically what you are. You want to seal off the edge, whether it's the pocket edge, the running lanes, whatever. So your push is to come around, and it's basically going to form a circle. So your edge rusher is going to come around and form the top of the circle. Your interior guys are going to form the bottom of the circle, and you're going to close the circle. The edge rushers at certain points would form that circle and go to close, but then there's gigantic running lanes for the interior guys because they're not doing their end of it. Now,
Yep.
your buddy over there with Pack-a-day podcast, Andy Herman, who we've had on the show before, I'm going to disagree with something that he put into, I think he just released an article a couple days ago or something. And part of it, he said that Kenny Clark was in decline. I disagree with that.
Okay.
And here's why I disagree with that. One, he's still only 29 friggin' years old.
That is insane to me. He's Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark feels like one of those kids that's been in college for like 7 years, and it's just like he's only a senior. Like, he's been here for 8 years. It,
So that one I got to give to him because he's still young. Yes, he's got a lot
yeah.
of mileage on the body, whatever, but he's still young. Two, like I was just saying with Rashawn and Lucas, Kenny has only ever played 3-4 defense or 3-4
Yeah.
tackle his whole life. He played at a UCLA, he played it with Green Bay. This 4-3 thing is brand new to him. He's still got the mindset of 3-4, where okay, we got to anchor our position. And if I can get free, I'm going to get free. You could see that play out a lot with him over the course of this past year. So I don't agree that he's in a decline. I think that he's in a new situation, and it took him a long while over the year to get out of that mindset. Again, 2025 is going to be if he comes back and he continues to not play at a level Kenny Clark should play at, I agree he's in a decline.
Right.
But I don't see it. I gotta whenever a new system. I think we're kind of spoiled right now. This new system, Halfley installed, was way more successful than any of us expected it was going to be going into this year. So now we're trying to nitpick every little thing that we can because we didn't expect them to be top 5 here, top 10 here, top this here. We didn't expect that. We figured it was going to be okay. Well, they're still learning. They're going to be about mid range throughout the year. And then 2025 is going to be the telling year. We didn't expect them to come out and be the part of the team that was leading this team to victories and
Yeah.
that. So,
And I think part of it too that you mentioned like when we're talking about the pass rusher specifically. Yeah,
yes.
I'm glad you brought up the interior line because yeah, like if no one is scared about Kenny Clark or TJ Slayton or Devontae Wyatt in the middle, they can focus more on chipping on the
Yep.
edge and taking care of that. Or game planning the edge rushers, like you said, to come out farther and they know the middle won't be is gonna be wide open. I think part of this though too is that Jeff Halfley was planning this defense around having better cornerbacks in this
Yeah.
defense. Jair Alexander, he's expecting Eric Stokes to take a step. You're expecting Nixon and Valentine to do more. And then, for at least half the season, they were still figuring out who's their other starting safety. And also, who's gonna be playing middle linebacker? They found Edrin Cooper, and I think instantly really loved what they were getting out of him, and he had to deal with injuries on and off, and so you're rotating, McDuffie in there. Quay Walker spent time hurt, and so there was a lot of this defense that got hamstrung at times due to the injury restrictions from everybody, and Halfley wasn't able to do some of the things. You could tell the games where this defense looked really good. I go back to Arizona, Houston, New Orleans. Who was all out there? You've got Evan Williams, you've got Edrin Cooper. Most of your defensive seven front is playing most of your snaps, and you saw how well they executed defensively. And so I think that's a real part of it is when we look at, was this a down year for the defense with the pass rush and whatever. I think that has to be taken into account as Halfley's trying to implement the system, which takes a good season to do, and by the time he gets it in there, he's still rotating guys in that haven't played half of the season as well. So I think next year's going to be a real telling point for what the Jeff Halfley experience is truly going to kind of be. And then, like as you mentioned, getting free agents in, I think that was another thing is like this year it was a really an evaluation for Jeff Halfley of these are my guys. How do they fit into my system? Who do I want to stick around? Who's going to walk? Who do I want to bring in? That kind of thing. So I think for this being sort of an evaluation year and you're implementing defense, that's a pretty good defensive production. But I do think that when we're looking specifically at that pass rush, I think everything you said there, the inconsistency is the thing that sticks out the most. There has to be at least one person that consistently is a threat, or else it really doesn't have the impact.
Right, and I don't and with Halfley, I even mentioned this under Barry when they drafted Lucas. I don't know why they didn't try to. stack Rashawn and Lucas next to each other. Whether one's
Yeah.
standing up, one, whichever one's doing what, whether Rashawn's standing up and Lucas is in the hand in the dirt under Barry, or if both of them are lined up next to each other. I'm not because they're similar guys, which they're more strength than speed. They have a decent amount of speed because they are athletic, but they're more strength guys. That would have collapsed a whole side of the line.
Mhm.
A whole side of the line. Then you could have had more of your speed guys with Brenton Cox and Kingsley and those guys on the other side who could clean up when one whole side of the line is collapsing. So I don't understand that. And like you said, it was just let's see what we can have with what we got and then go from there. So
At the very least, it's a matter of they're all talented. Why wouldn't
yes.
you want more talented people on this defense? Like you mentioned Brenton Cox. Brenton Cox had so many flashes, like he deserved to be getting more snaps than he did. So why not scheme up something to get your two best edge rushers on the field at the same time as Brenton Cox and create some kind of something, you know?
Yeah.
I totally agree.
And I want to say that Brenton Cox and Kingsley and Mosby were part of the reason why it made it easy to trade Preston Smith.
Yeah.
Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, I love Preston. Preston was obviously the better Smith brother that stuck around and all that. But I understand it from his point of view. He wasn't making it in a 4-3. He wanted to go to a 3-4. Didn't work out for him very well because it sounds like he's going to be a cap casualty or whatever. And but I think just having those three guys on top of Lucas and Rashawn just made it that much easier. But let's go ahead and move into free agents. This one looks like it's going to be quite the free agent pool as Dan and I were pulling up lists here. Now, because we are so early in, or well, I guess you can call it late in the 2024 season, the 2025 free agent season hasn't kicked off yet. So this isn't the most accurate list in the world because somebody's going to get tagged, somebody's going to get a contract extension, some guys might get cut, so there could be an even bigger list. But Dan, out of the guys that you're seeing right now, and we're gonna say outside of Khalil Mack because I guess Khalil Mack would be the is being the big talked about guy. The only drawback I have to say about Khalil Mack is what is he going to want for being 34 years old?
Right.
You know, but outside of that, what are you seeing out of this free agent pool that you think would step in and be a contributor to the 2025 Green Bay Packers?
Yeah, the guy that when because I really didn't look too much at this free agent list till we logged on and I was just kind of like taking a glance through everything. The one that kind of sticks out to me in terms of fit and how much money they're gonna like kind of ask for is Aziz Ojulari from the Giants. I think because I like you said, your top two pass rushers right now, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, those are power rushers. I want speed, and that's what I was like focusing on when I was looking at this draft class and everything. Like I want the quick twitch guy that's going to get off the line and get behind the line before anybody else because though it has become look at the last 3 games of this season. Vikings, Bears, Eagles. What was the time from snap to pass on like those games? It was all quick hitters because they knew there was nothing down the field. They couldn't get to the quarterback. I want someone that's going to get there fast, get there quick. Ojulari is a guy that I think he's still fairly young. I'm pretty sure. I think he's just coming off of his rookie deal, if I'm not mistaken.
According to the list that I'm looking at, it says he's 25 currently.
Okay. I just there are There are plenty of guys on this list that I would love to have, like a Josh Sweat from the Eagles. Hassan Reddick would be a fun one. I think he's more of the power rush than he is that, but Sweat would be great. I just wonder, like those are all guys playing at the very top of their class and have a cachet that comes with it. Ojulari kind of feels like a quote unquote like diamond in the rough, you know?
Yeah.
So I think he would be interesting. The one that stuck out to me though, you brought up was DeMarcus Lawrence for the Cowboys. He's how old is he now? And he's
According to
coming
this
off
says
an
he's
injury too.
33, so he's about Khalil Mack age.
Coming off of an injury, maybe you take a little flyer on him. I don't know. I'm I'm open to anything. Yeah. What about you? I'd like to hear your take on free agency.
Well, I agree with you with Ojulari, and the Packers were kind of linked to him before the trade deadline, but it
Hmm.
sounded like the Giants weren't going to give him up. So, that one would be interesting since he does have a little bit of I don't know, you want to say a history with the Packers wanting him. I'm kind of interested in this one, even though I know he never lived up to his draft hype, but that'd be Chase Young. I wonder if maybe a reclamation project would be there, maybe getting a guy like Halfley and his crew to motivate him a little bit more. Maybe that might be something. You know a little bit more about him being the Ohio State guy, but really, there's maybe Josh Uche. He'll be coming off from the Chiefs. I know he's
Hmm.
maybe a little bit more of the speed guy. Uh, Homerism tells me Anthony Nelson coming off from the Buccaneers, but I don't know if he'll be more of a rotational guy or not. Derek Barnett, I know, has been linked a little bit as a possible, but I think he's another one that's more power than speed.
Yeah.
So, but to be fair, I don't think there's really. I mean, there's a ton of names in that would be great out of the free agency pool, and I know the Packers are going to have a ton of money, but a lot of them remind me of what we already have,
Yeah.
and it just I don't know if that's something we and I use the royal we as a Packer fan, you know, if that's something they need to get into or if they just need to stick with the draft and maybe take a couple of flyers like a Barnett or a Chase Young.
Yeah.
Uh,
See, that's my thing with this defense and the pass rush particularly is I should say specifically the pass rush because they have invested a lot of time, a lot of capital in pass rush, and I think really everybody that's currently on in the pass rush group right now were brought on as some type of project.
yeah,
You know, like they were never a polished answer to the pass rush, and they were always going to take time. And that's the plan Brian Gutekunst had when he brought all of these people in at some point. And so I wonder if they would bring in a player like a Khalil Mack or a Josh Sweat because that takes away that takes away snaps from guys that you're hoping to develop. But then at the same time, like you said, someone like a Chase Young, who is a project in himself, do you want to invest in another project and wait for that and hope for that to develop? We talk about the free agency class with this group. It's funny that like the free agency class kind of underwhelms a little bit, but then when you look at the trade candidates for all for the past road, like some of the biggest trade bait stories out there for the NFL in this offseason are all edge rushers. The Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Micah Parsons, I'd throw in as a quote unquote edge rusher. Like it's funny that it seems like if the Packers want to make a take a huge swing, a home run swing at pass rusher, it really feels like they would have to give up some kind of draft capital, either
Yeah.
trading away for a Myles Garrett or trading up to go for one of the top flight guys in this draft earlier in the first round or something. It doesn't feel like the final answer, the final solution is sitting in free agency at the moment.
And that's true too. I mean, I'm trying to go through this list real quick, and it just I don't know. I don't. It just like I said, it seems like you just said. Most of them are similar to what we have in projects. Like I'm looking at Joseph Osai from uh, the Bengals. He had a heck of a year this past
Mhm.
season, but I just I think he would be a similar project, and I don't think the Bengals are going to let him go just because of his. He's still youngish, and they have issues as What do you think about the trade prospects? And before I let you answer that, I'm going to say I don't think they end up with either one of them. I am in the boat that I do not see Goody trading the first round draft pick, being that they just got the NFL draft in Green
Uh-huh.
Bay, and I could just see the signage and the hate and the chorus of boos for Gutekunst if they ended up trading out with Green Bay hosting the draft.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because we just recorded our episode for Pack-a-Day like 4 hours ago, and we were talking about we were talking about Jordan Love like on Radio Row, and they were bringing up the he did the interview with Mike. He was on Micah Parsons podcast and was like talking to him and how that's a trade rumor swirling around. Are the Cowboys going to trade or extend Michael Parsons? And we had that same conversation of like, are the Packers kind of hamstrung by not having that? They don't want to trade away high draft capital for the first and probably only time they host the draft in Mark Murphy's last year. And we came to the conclusion that if they traded away a first round pick for a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett, and he walked out on stage with Roger Goodell to announce the Packers' first pick, that'll be the single only time Roger Goodell does not get booed in Green Bay at the draft. And so I think that would be very funny if they were to do that. I don't think that's anything they would do, but like we said, is do you make decisions based on base decisions for the future of your franchise based on the fact that it'll look good for the cameras for one night at the draft, you know? And if you like it's saying like if you traded for if the decision was trade for Reggie White or have your first round pick at the draft, like it's hard for me to say I wouldn't do that. The problem is though, they're not just giving up the draft capital. It's a crap ton of money for all of those
Yes,
players. And
yes.
so I don't think they'll do it. My inclination as a Packer fan also says like I don't know if I would spend that type of money. I think you're still better off like taking a shot on a reclamation project or a draft pick to come out of nowhere and be that guy. So I wouldn't, but the reckless Madden player in me still says I want to see it.
Well, see, here's my thought process
Sure,
with it.
sure.
And so go with me on this.
I'm
It's a
ready.
scary insight into my mind. So
Every single time is a Joe.
so you got to, figure that they're going to have some kind of special way to announce draft picks. whether they you know trust putting these guys on the tubes and go down the snow hill, or ride the bike up to the stage, or you got to figure for
Oh,
popping. That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Joe, I hadn't even thought about that. That is amazing. They have to do that. They have to do that with the bikes.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? But think about how much money the Packers would have to pop to do that. Not necessarily, bring the kids in to do it, but they'd have to pop the money to block off certain portions of this and build the ramp to this and all that stuff. Or, the same with the snow hill and, all
Yeah,
that good stuff.
right.
So for them to put all that time and effort and money into it, and they don't even get to allow their first round draft pick to participate in that, I just don't see how the Packers would be able to live that down. That would be on the top 5 blunders of every NFL Network special from here until, our generation is dead.
But is it a blunder if you draft a or if you trade for a Max Crosby and he's the revolution that you needed on that defense to become a top 5 defense. I think it only becomes a blunder if you trade for somebody and they pull an Aaron Rodgers and pop their Achilles 4 plays into the
But see,
season.
that's also the issue that you run into. You spend the draft capital on a guy, and then he immediately steps in and gets injured or
Right.
something happens. So there's a risk either way with
Mhm.
it. You can pop the draft capital and something happens to the guy. You cannot pop the draft capital and you take a guy that's out of the league in 2 years.
Kevin King.
But I just I just remember all the vitriol, and it was compounded by not taking the Badger player
Right.
in the year that they traded out of the first round to select Kevin King and with the first pick of the second round. And I just remember all the hate on trading out. "Well, I stayed up all night long just to, not," and I just remember all that hate. And for this to be in the city of Green Bay, with the Packers popping all this money, with the Packers making all this. Can you just imagine the Reddit threads, the Twitter comments, the Blue Sky comments? It, it would not look good for Ed Policy taking over for Mark Murphy at that point. His tenure would already start out tainted in the minds of certain Packer fans.
But you know what? Maybe that's the best thing for Ed policy is because you Mark Murphy basically gives a big middle finger to the entire fan says, "I built this thing. I'll do what I want. I'm out." And now Ed policy comes in, he's like, "Don't be mad at me. Like it was crazy Mark Murphy. It was crazy old man Murphy that did all that stuff. Like I'm the new guy. Like I'm your buddy."
Yeah. Now I can see them trading the second round pick. I could see them trading if they could find a deal for somebody for the second round pick. I could see them doing that.
I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't got I didn't look at what our draft capital actually looks like, but yeah,
I
if they
think we
were
just
able
got an extra
is it
seventh.
just
I think
straight up
that's
and
it.
just an extra 7?
I don't know
Um,
about the if we get any comp pick, but I know you have the extra seventh from
yeah.
trading the trades.
I will say too, we're looking at that draft capital and draft situation right now. We don't know what's gonna happen between now and then in terms of what we might trade away. Or get rid of. Who knows? Like that there could be there could be someone on this roster right now, Jair Alexander, who
And I could fight you all damn day on that because I
I,
just
I
and that's another thing
I'm
that I've
I'm wearing
disagreed with.
I'm wearing my Alexander jersey. I am the one lone member of the Kotnik family that stands up for Jair, but I do wonder like, if does does trading away Jair get you an extra second or third that you parlay into doing something? I'm not saying I would do that, but it's definitely on the table for where we're at. So, the situation on come draft night might be very different in terms of what we're looking at situation wise.
Well, money wise, I think the Packers are in the best position they've been in a long time because I think
Yeah.
what is it they have 62 million open, and
Yeah.
then if they restructure like three people's deals, that opens up another $51 million, and that's what the Bears were sitting at last year in free agency without doing any of that. I think
Um,
Goody could work miracles with it, and I know there's a bunch of guys that are going to need to have contracts. There's at least three of them on the offensive line, but that's conversations for later down the line for us. But I don't know if there's anybody in the free agent class for edge rusher that I'm saying go get. I'm not even really sold on Khalil Mack.
yeah.
34 years old. I think he's turned into more of a rotational guy than a full, a three down guy. What's he going to ask for
Right.
contract and all that stuff? So if he comes on a team friendly deal like a Julius Peppers deal or something like that, go for it. But I think your best bet's going to be draft picks,
Yeah.
which is the perfect segue into what we need to talk about next. And I even dug out my handy dandy, my draft notebook. That's why we were kind of late to recording because I was freaking out because I couldn't find my draft notebook, and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to remember everything I wrote down." Okay, so I want to put a disclaimer before we get into any of this, and I try to put this disclaimer into every episode we do about drafts and every year. I am not a guy that puts a round grade on somebody. When I go in and look, I just look at, I'll grab this name from this list and I'll look at, different film on them. I'll grab this name, I'll look at different film at them. So the guys that I'm looking at, I have no idea if they're going to be a first rounder, second, third, fourth, fifth, preferred, undrafted free agent. I don't know. These are just guys that I've watched, I've liked, and should be available for the Packers. I don't know if that's how you do it, but I just put that general disclaimer out there just in case.
Joe, I'm an idiot. So I I don't
Well, I
know
know it.
I don't know anything. Like, the draft stuff, I appreciate you always bringing me on, and I love getting to talk about draft stuff, but, like, I I'm not a professional. Like, all of these
Well,
guys look
shit,
like
I
they're
don't think
first
any
round.
of us are professionals.
th they're all they all look like first round picks to me because they all do crap I can't do. Like, I'm like,
Right.
"Wow, that looks really good," and then someone's like, "Yeah, he looks like crap. He'll never play in the league." I'm like, "Oh,
Well,
okay."
that's like I'm part of a draft group message on X, and that's part of the only reason why I still have my Twitter account open is because my messages over there with
Blue
Brian
Sky, give
Mafia.
us group messages, please.
There's a few things I wish Blue Sky would do, and I wish more people would get involved. So if you're listening to this, get involved with Blue Sky. It is much better than Twitter.
Yeah.
It's you do have the occasional argument. Trust me, I know. I just had one this week, but it has been a breath of fresh air compared to what Twitter has been
Mhm.
the last few years. But I'm in a group with Mafi and Kawano and like three or four other draft guys that will sit there. And I put in a comment the other day, and I felt like I was like a kindergartner getting talked down to from three or four of these guys because I was like, wait, because in my mind, I didn't see out of everybody that I watched and all the stuff that I was seeing, I didn't see a consensus. That's the guy we need.
Yeah, yeah,
I saw a handful of guys to maybe 10 whatever guys that had tons of potential, but there was no polish to it to where that's a surefire. That one's going to be the guy that you need to get. You know, uh, the next JJ Watt or whatever.
right.
I didn't really see that. I just saw potential. if this guy fixes this thing or this guy does this
Yeah,
thing,
exactly. Yep.
he could be the next. And then, I get the comment from Brian, well, I got 6 guys that have first round grades on them. Okay, I'm sorry, Dad.
Well, see, that's the thing is like, I think to what it looks like is you are spot on. I think with the idea of like every person in this draft class, the edge rush draft class, has something that they need to work on. They're
Yeah.
not a finished product. It's really more just about what is their product right now that they can come and contribute immediately, and how much of a project are you willing to work on to get them to their fullest potential. And yeah, there's at least like 3 to 4 guys on this class that I would say like if they were drafted in the first round, like I probably would that would make sense. I think part of all what contributes to this also is it doesn't seem like a very strong skill position draft. Like the quarterback, it's not a really great quarterback draft. It's not a super great wide receiver class. Like, so a lot of teams that probably would benefit more from a top tier quarterback, a top tier pass catcher, a running back, something like that, are probably going to lean more towards guys like this that if this class was transported into like maybe last year's class, maybe these guys are getting knocked down to second, third round
Yeah.
grades because of the rest of the skill position talent out there. Pass rush is important, but I think so many more of these teams are focused on building around their offense that guys like this, there's probably a couple guys in here that sneak into the first round that maybe wouldn't in a different draft class.
And we're at the position again, like the Packers normally are, where we're towards the end of the end of the round anyway.
Right.
And you're not going to get that surefire guy in the first place. And I think that's a common misconception with a lot of uh, fans is when you start getting further down in that first round. Yes, they're supposed to be your top guys that are supposed to start right away. But the further down you get, the more they are going to be that high potential guy. So I know a lot of that we were even talking about, and a lot's been said about Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness. They were mid round first rounders.
Right.
They were still not quite in that top tier. So by the time the Packers got into that board, they couldn't grab a Will Anderson. They couldn't grab guys like that. They had to get what was going to be next best for them that fit their profile, that they thought that with their coaching staff they were going to get a star out of them. So we're looking at that again, but only in a little bit of a worse spot because we're 10 to 12 picks away from that. So with that being said, there's 2 guys that I know you're probably gonna talk highly about right now. I did watch, I didn't make notes on because I figured I was like, Dan's gonna be on, Dan's gonna talk about these guys. So I'm gonna let you have the floor for this, and I'll just give you some of my thoughts afterwards.
Are you referring to uh the 2025 champion Ohio State Buckeyes Jack Sawyer and DJ Tuamal? I never
That's
remember
why
how to
Quano is supposed to be here. Quano is the one that pronounces these
I,
names for me.
he pronounce he pronounces these names, and also he's ducking my ass. That Michigan SOB. Like I came on here last year and I took all of my lumps watching his team win a championship, and I get to come on here with maybe the best class of Buckeyes that we've seen in a decade, run through a 4-team playoff, and Mike Kawano is at Chuck E. Cheese. So,
Well, here, we'll clip that, but I want you to give him a speech right now. I will stay silent. I will even mute myself.
Mike, I love you, buddy. This this year is what you should be expecting moving forward. I know that you can come at me with head-to-head record. It eats me up inside. I understand that, Mike. But what what progressed after that is exactly what the Ohio State juggernaut is and will be moving forward. And I'll give you the win in November, but I hope you realize that it released a kraken that will not be put back into its cage. And I look forward to seeing you again in November. And finally, good luck with the NCAA if you have a program after they're done with you. Thank you, Mike.
And see, I'm just sitting over here in Iowa hoping we have some kind of competitive team.
What's the punting situation look like in Iowa?
Hey, we got another Aussie punter. I love him to death. He's just as good as Corey Taylor.
Okay, so I might go away from where you're sort of thinking with this. I'm not crazy about Sawyer or Tuamalolo. Like Jack Jack's a player like Jack Sawyer exists in the Rudy quadrant of college football players. Like he's not like undersized. I'm not saying he's like, that, but like Jack Sawyer was great in college because he's not going up against NFL talent every single week, and he has an absolute crazy motor and drive to be a good football player. That can take you a lot of places in college football. I don't necessarily know how much it really translates to when you're playing Penny Sewell twice a year. Like it just I don't think he has enough to translate into someone that's going to be a high impact style player. And the same kind of goes with JT. JT seems he's got a little bit more raw athleticism to him. And so I think the upside on him is actually higher than it is on Jack Sawyer. But JT also benefited from playing on a really great defensive line. I am not sure how much he can do when you're just relying on him to do it by himself, unfortunately. So I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, and both of them are great. I would I would not go anywhere near them until like the fourth or fifth round. Like they are day 3 guys in my book.
And really, that's what I was talking about when I put my disclaimer out there. There are guys that look like they have
Right.
certain tools to do it, but there's no polish or nothing really popped out. I think they played off each other pretty well. I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they did great with the situation that they had. I'm not saying that they aren't going to be stars in the league and going forward. Um, I'm not sure if they will work for the Packers in the way Packer fans would hope for them. This was another thing that I was kind of questioning with the group chat. Do the Packers continue to go off the measurables that they like, or do
Right.
they wander from them a little bit? Because right now, the typical Packers edge rusher is between like 6'5", 6'6", 270 to 280. Those are mainly your pure strength guys.
Right.
They have all the moves and the athleticism and all that to do whatever you need them to do, but they're more your bull rush, your strength guys. Do the Packers slide off that a little bit and go with somebody a little bit more around the 250, 255 era or range that is more your speed guys? Those two guys for Ohio State, I won't say the Ohio State because that just I don't understand that from you guys. That'd be like me
It's
saying
trademarked.
the Iowa Hawkeyes. Yeah, I don't think those guys fit the speed type of thing the Packers need.
Yeah. No.
They fit the model of what the Packers normally take,
Mhm.
but I don't think they fit the model of what the Packers need. The Packers have plenty of strength. They just don't have a ton of speed right now coming off that edge. So that is more where I'm seeing it. So while I may grumble that they took another Ohio State Buckeye, I wouldn't be against them taking these guys. I just don't know if I see them fitting exactly what the Packers need at the moment.
That that's exactly right. That's what I want. I want the speed. I don't want
We're the
I
Mickeys
don't
over here telling Rocky to eat thunder and crap lightning kid.
Right. Yeah, I don't want I'm tired of drafting the Blake Martinez's of the world and saying like, well, they've got more drive than anybody. They'll get in there and they'll make like. I want to draft talent. I want to draft the athleticism. I want the guys that they could roll out of bed with a hangover and have two pressures and a QB knockdown. You know what I mean? Like that's what I want. I want the guys that are just the raw athletic power and I'm saying Jack Sawyer could be very I think Jack Sawyer probably ends up playing in the NFL for a while because he's going to be a kick-ass special teamer. He's going to and that's not a bad thing.
No, I
I
just
think he
find it
plays
funny that some of these guys think of him as a first rounder and hear Dan saying he's going to be a hell of a special teamer.
I think he plays as a rotational pass rusher. I think he gets probably like 30%, 40% of like defensive snaps somewhere in there. You know, he comes in on pass rush downs, but he makes his money and sticks around with the team because I think he becomes a special team. Fuck, Mark Murphy was a special teams
Yeah,
ace, and look where it
Ted
took him.
Thompson.
Ted Thompson, like there, that I think that's who I was thinking of. Ted Thompson, like Jack Sawyer can be a really good productive player for an NFL team. I just don't think he's going to be a star pass rusher for an NFL team.
And that could be the case. And I've been wrong on things before. I will fully admit I was wrong on. I'm one of many that was wrong on the TJ Watt front because I
Same.
was
I was
going.
about to say you're going to say TJ Watt because that was me too.
Well, I mean, and I will go into this because I get into this argument all the time on Reddit and Twitter and Blue Sky and all this, that knowing the information we had at the time, TJ Watt was not a good pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was 2 years into a system. He was 2 years into a position he's never played before. He's full of injuries. He disappeared in big games when he was absolutely needed. So to think that he was going to turn into what he is now is almost impossible. But anyway, that's an argument from almost fuck what 10 years ago,
It was
15 years ago.
it was 11 years ago. It was what that was the first draft my wife and I started dating because I remember trading out of that first round. I was at her house and I'm like, it was the same thing. I'm like, damn it, like I stayed up for nothing.
So I'm going to throw a name of a guy out there.
Okay.
And again, I'm going to lean heavily on my disclaimer that I don't put rounds on guys. So I have no idea where he's going to go or anything like that or whatever. But there's a couple of things that are going for him. One is he knows the Halfley system. He's coming from Boston College.
Okay.
Two, he's what we were just talking about, where he has tremendous speed. And the third thing that I say that he's got going for him is he's got one of the best swim moves I've seen in a long time. And you really don't see that off the edge anymore. And this guy in one game, and I can't think of who he was playing off the top of my head, did the swim move on two guys back to back. And he succeeded both times. I mean, it was just running back, swim move, tight end, swim move. And I just got your quarterback, son of a bitch, from Boston College. His name is Donovan
Donovan.
Ezriaku,
Yeah.
but he is an edge rusher. He's a speed rusher. It looked like he had some good balance. His bend was all right, but they definitely could use some work on it. I thought he had a solid initial punch. His edge setting wasn't bad, so I mean, he's got that going for him for somebody who's a little bit undersized compared to what the Packers. I think he's listed at like 254, something
Yeah.
like that. And he's got everything that I was just talking about, the speed, the quickness, and all that thing. And like I said, I couldn't get over it in one game, and it was on the same play. He had the tight end come after him, boom, over the top. Running back tried to come in, boom, over the top, and he still made the play on it. I was like, holy shit. But I love the kid, and like I said, I think the number one thing that he's got going for him is Jeff Halfley. If
Sure.
Halfley says, "I want that guy on my team because I know what I'm getting out of him, I know what he's capable of, and he's going to add something to this team," what better endorsement can you have?
No, that's totally right. I think it'll be very telling when if it gets to the second round, depending on how the board falls. It gets to the second round, and let's say we've had 5, 6 edge rushers off the board already, and second round comes up, and he's on the board, and the Packers pass on him. I think that'll tell you everything you need to know about what Jeff Halfley thinks about uh, Donovan. I like him too. Like you said, like a little undersized for what the Packers usually go for, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. It's like we talked
Right.
about. Like I don't want that same style. I I like his ability to just get off, like you said, get off the line, and it does not matter kind of what's going in front of him. Get to the quarterback, get to the backfield, like as quickly as possible. Kind of in terms of like the pass rush, maybe he's one of the more polished ones. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
top guys, like Pierce, Carter, Williams, the guy from Georgia, like are all very like pure athletic, and a lot of the stuff is need to work on hands, need to work on moves. Donovan was kind of one of the few that was like that part of his game is pretty good. He kind of needs to bulk up. He kind of needs to be able to be stronger to hold that edge a little bit more. So I like it. I can I throw a name at you? My draft crush that I am.
Go for it. That's what we're
eh,
here for.
I'm this is a guy that I think he I think when you're kind of putting everything together, I think he could I think he could fit what the Packers are looking for in terms of their measurables. I didn't write them down, but I'm pretty sure they were right about there. I think he's like 6'6", 6'5". And I think he also fits what we're sort of looking for in terms of the athleticism and speed around the edge, and that's Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Big dude, and he's quick. And honestly, everything I saw about him where his weaknesses are uh plays too focused, like doesn't can kind of get lost in like pursuit, or doesn't the whole thing, the one that was like see ball get ball, like he kind of like
Yeah.
is a step behind sometimes in reading run defense and stuff. I don't care. That great. Go from point A to point B. I don't care if the ball goes to C. I want you to A to B, because on those times that it does go to B, I want you there ruining the play. And so I just every time I watched him, I'm like, gosh, like he's a massive kid. He's so quick, and he's just the kind of guy that I think fits perfectly with what the Packers look for physically and what they're missing from on that defensive line, which, like we said, is just that raw speed to get into the backfield.
And then throw in his teammate,
Yeah.
Nick Scorton, and, I am going to go on a small rant because we're getting to the point where we gotta I miss the old days of armchair scouting, where you could go on YouTube and you would find cut-ups on everybody
Yep.
that you needed to.
Yep.
Now people are not doing cut-ups, they're just throwing, well, this offense versus this defense. So you've got to, okay, which number am I looking for now?
Right.
And there were so many times when I was doing that, I couldn't tell which one I was watching because they were
Yeah.
so similar. The only difference between the 2 is Nick is, 2 inches shorter. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they're same build and everything else, but they're both similar. So I think if you could really, get either one of them, again, I don't know what round, I think you'd be pretty good with it because 'cause you're gonna get a similar player out of both of them. And, to, add to it, when a player is getting the majority of the double team, there's got to be something special to him. And that's
Right.
what I said about Stewart is he tended to be double teamed often.
Yeah.
So when you're seeing that, then offenses are scheming to stop him.
Right.
And that's a telling thing to me. So yeah,
It,
I
the,
really enjoyed watching
and the thing too about Nick, he's 20 years old. He can't even drink
him.
yet. So like
Well, there you go. We'd
he
have
could
another Kenny Clark.
that's right. It's the next Kenny Clark. Like there is something to be said about drafting a guy that young where 10 years from now he's barely grazing 30. That's 10 years of prime production age. There's something to be said about the value in that.
And the Packers tend to do that. There's
Yeah.
only been a couple of times that their first round pick has been over like 22 years old since Gutekunst has taken over. So, uh, I will give one guy that I wasn't overly fond of, but I
Okay.
see that he gets talked about a lot is Landon Jackson out of Arkansas.
Mhm.
I wasn't overly impressed with him. Uh, he's got his listed size is what the Packers, MO is. He did look a little bit quick off the edge, but he seemed to try to be more of a speed guy. He didn't seem very uh physical, especially
Yeah.
for his given size. And his pass rush moves was very limited. So I wasn't overly impressed with him.
Yeah, he almost kind of plays smaller than what he is.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you said, he should be with that. I think he's like 6'7", something he's huge.
Yeah,
He
six
should
seven 280 is what
yeah,
NFL Draft Buzz has him listed as.
like and like you said, it seemed like a lot of times he kind of almost like it feels like he forgets that he has that ability and or maybe it's not there. Like what the power that you would expect from that kind of player doesn't seem to always translate every single time when I see him. One more that I want to throw at you because this one is one that I am as a Mac school graduate. I love looking at the small guys,
Yeah,
the small school guys. Mike Green. I'm interested on your take on him.
I will
Led
be honest, I didn't watch him
okay,
because a lot of times when the armchair scouts are saying, "This is the guy we need to take. This is the guy we need to take." I don't watch him because 9 times out of 10 the Packers don't even mess around with him.
right. So Mike Green he played at Marshall.
Yes. I yeah.
Yeah, undersized a little bit, but led FBS in sacks. But the issue, he played Ohio State this year, and I remember going into the Marshall game. It's still Will Howard's like first or second game, and I'm like, They keep talking about this Mike Green, and I remember 10 years ago when Ohio State played Buffalo and went up against Khalil Mack and kept Buffalo got blown out, but kept Buffalo around for like a quarter and a half just because Khalil Mack was game wrecking everything.
Right.
And I was kind of worried about Mike Green being that same thing, and he got completely shut down. And I'm like, everyone the stat numbers show up like this, his production shows up like this, but then like the one time he kind of went up against top flight NFL level talent, he disappeared. And so
And
I,
that could
I'm
be a
I,
multitude of anything. That
sure,
could
sure, sure,
be, not having the as physical ability to be able to do it.
right.
It could be that he wasn't coached proper. Not saying that they have bad coaches, but maybe he wasn't prepared
Some
as well
Yeah,
as he needed to be.
totally,
So that
totally.
could have been anything.
He could have had a stomach flu. Who knows? Like
Oh,
it
trust
literally
me.
could have been
I
anything.
remember nothing of the Bears game because I caught that
Oh, the
norovirus, and
oh yeah.
I was temping at 102.4,
Oh
so that
god.
whole Bears game was a fever dream for me.
I think you were the lucky one.
There's only, like, 2 plays that I remember out of the whole game: Christian Watson getting hurt and the punt return.
The two worst plays of the game. I
But,
I
yeah, I didn't tend to watch my Green, one, because I was running out of time with all the other
Sure,
ones that I watched,
sure.
and like I said, it seems like everywhere I turn, they're hyping him up as, "This is the guy the Packers need to go for," and like I said, 9
Yeah,
times out of 10, those guys that they're talking about aren't the guys that the Packers tend to take. Not that it wouldn't make a good story, and I think if it was 10 years ago and it was Ted Thompson running things,
right. Oh god, this is
that might be his, number 1 pick or whatever. But and there was another one that I was going to watch, but I was struggling to find anything on him, and he was from a small school. It's like Central Arkansas. Daniel, is it Weaver?
Mm,
David Walker. David Walker. And I think he's a little bit similar to Green, where he's only 6'2", 260. And he was, from everything that I read, he was a massive numbers guy. He was stacking up the numbers and all that. But you know, you got to wonder about some of those guys. Is it because it's a big fish in a small pond that they're having the
right.
success, or are they really, you know, just that damn good? Because sometimes, especially now with the transfer portal, you got to wonder why they didn't go to a bigger school,
Oh, yeah.
because they
Yeah, yeah,
would
yeah.
have a better way of getting into the NFL if that's what they wanted. And there's nothing wrong with it. Some guys just have loyalty. I think
No,
that's
yeah,
the only
yeah.
reason why we've got the University of Iowa has got some of their 5-star recruits, because 2 out of the 3 out of the last 5 years have been, legacies,
Right.
and
Yeah,
that's the
totally.
Epinesas. But, there's a couple other guys that I watched, and we'll kinda wrap it up here since we're already at the hour and 10 mark. Princely Umanilian out of Ole
The Ole
Miss.
Miss. Yeah.
I think he's a tremendous speed rusher, but he needs to work on his pass rush soon. And then Ashton Gillette out of Louisville. I thought he would be a tremendous guy to pick up. So, uh, final question for you before we finally wrap up and all
Sure.
that good stuff. Uh, your Brian Goodikins calls you and says, "Dan, I'm having trouble here. I don't know what to do. I somebody gave me your number and said you'd be the guy to talk to." Out of everything, you don't even have to give me a name on a player, just what position group that you think that the first round pick is going to be for the Green Bay Packers. W-
Man.
What do I do, Dan? Tell me.
Brian, I heard Iowa's got a great punter. Like, I think you should look at.
He's not eligible for another couple of years.
Honestly, if it's me, and I haven't dug too deep into what the full draft the draft looks like this year yet, but I think you have to go. I think you have to go one of three ways. I think you either go defensive line, whether that becomes an edge rusher or becomes a tackle, a top flight tackle. There's a just kind of grazing at it. There's a decent amount of tackles. A couple of the I would take the Ohio State defensive tackles before I take the edge rushers. I think you go defensive line, offensive line, or cornerback is where I think you
You
go.
think offensive line, really, in the first round?
I just depending on how everything falls. If if nothing jumps off the screen at you, edge rush or pass rush wise, I should say. If there's a top flight offensive lineman on the board, I wouldn't say no to it just because I think offensive line is quickly becoming a position of need, and I would rather address it now than wait a year or two when uh, I can't even remember who it was that came in at guard halfway through that Bears game, the rookie.
Asking the wrong guy.
I forget his name. It was a undrafted. I was like, it was a turnstile. I'm like, oh god, like we need something to happen. And
Unless
so
it
if
involved Christian Watson getting hurt or that punt return. I have no clue.
fair. So I think it all depends. I that's not the sexiest position. I think if there's other spots available, I'd go there. But if there is a top tier offensive lineman that falls down just because of the way the board falls, I wouldn't turn my nose up at it. I think it's becoming a position of need, and I'd rather build a young core around my offensive line versus a cornerback or a pass rusher that takes a year or two to develop. I'm a Big Ten guy. Give me an offensive lineman.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're wrong, but yeah, I mean, no, I'm in the group that I even question why they took Jordan Morgan last year
Sure.
in the first round with what they were setting at. But yeah, that's all. Who knows? Nobody knows
Yeah.
what Gutekunst is. He could be calling random fans and saying, "Hey, what do I do here?"
Fair.
So, Dan, I appreciate you. We always
Definitely.
love having you on. Hopefully, we can get you back on when Mike doesn't have
Please.
so many birthday parties or whatever.
Hey, as a
But
parent,
on
I understand because some of those parents don't prepare far enough in advance.
Well, see,
I don't
I'm
know if you
kind of wondering because we're still in like the winter months here.
right.
How many parents are having kids in the winter months? Aren't they supposed to
Uh,
like conceive in the winter
I
and have in the summer?
Joe, my first son was born at the end of January. My second kid's getting born at the beginning of March.
Well, that just says you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to conceive in the winter and have in the summer.
And my wife and I were both born in December and January.
See, the most of I was
It's
born in
genetic.
July. My brother was born in July. My sister was born in October, and I had another brother who was born in June. So, at least my parents did it right.
Mine were conceived in the NFL offseason. That tells you where my priorities are.
All right, Dano, tell everybody where they can find you and how to check you out.
Yeah, for sure. Mondays, at least for right now, Mondays on Pack-a-day. That will probably change as we get to the draft content, but I'll be doing something for the draft content for Pack-a-day. Check all of our stuff out over there. And then I am pretty much only on Blue Sky at this point. So check me out over there. It's at Dano the Mano.
Yeah, like I said earlier, Blue Sky is, much
It's the
better
place to
than
be.
I only keep my Twitter just in case I have to get a hold of some people that haven't decided to migrate over to Blue Sky, but I have
Exactly.
been off Twitter for a long. I haven't even decided to call it X yet, but that'll do it for our Edge Rushers episode of the Ohana Packers edition. I even forgot what our title was because normally Mike does this shit. Podcast. You can find me at Iowa Joe at on Blue Sky. You can find the show. We haven't quite done the show on Blue Sky yet, just because I'm bad enough trying to do my own shit on there, let alone do the show on there also. But we are on Instagram, Facebook, all those good things. Ohana Packers Edition. Do check out our website, ohanapackers.org, where we have, you know, newest articles, past episodes, our great merch shop, including our Star Wars themed merch shop, which Dano still has not went over and made his purchases yet. And it hurts me to this day because I specifically made those for my Star Wars people. But go over there, support us. That's how we can keep doing what we're doing. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're listening at. You can contact us, outbackpackers1919 at gmail.com. Comments, questions, anything like that. Next week, I believe, is offensive line. I don't know. I have to look at the thing. But for Mike, for Dan, for me, Iowa Joe, I'll finish this like Mike usually does. Aloha and go Pack Go.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for the up. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for